Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Ryan, and welcome to Central Park. We're happy to continue bringing the park to you through in-person tours as well as virtual programs like our weekly walks every Wednesday at 12:30. Thank you for joining us for another rendition of our weekly walk series. Today, we're taking a weekly walk titled Picnicking in Central Park with me, Ryan, on today, July 5th, 2023. Happy belated 4th of July to you all. As we make our way through the park today, we're going to be discussing a favorite activity that happens a year long, as well as a little bit about barbecuing, which happens in Central Park on 3 days of the year, one of them being 4th of July. So maybe some of you had the opportunity to have a picnic or barbecue in Central Park yesterday. And as we make our way through the park, I do want to thank you for joining us and caring for the park along with us. We at the Central Park Conservancy are the main caretakers, with our mission being to preserve and celebrate Central Park as a sanctuary from the pace and pressures of city life, enhancing the enjoyment and the well-being of all. Something we couldn't do without the care and support from individuals like yourselves. As we do make our way through our little program today, we're using Zoom. I'm sure you're all pretty familiar with this at this point. Use the chat feature to say hello, let us know where you're joining us from, maybe even share a favorite 4th of July memory you might have. If you do happen to have a question throughout the tour today, use the Q&A feature, and my colleague Jose will be on the back end answering any questions you might have. Last thing you're going to see pop up, which I'm going to start by launching right now, is a little poll for you. Now, I just have this one simple poll here today, and it is a little two-parter. Simple question here: have you ever had a picnic in Central Park? Simple yes or no there. And then the second part of that question is more important. It's something that I want to see everybody's answer. Is food required for it to be considered a picnic? So let everybody vote in that for a moment as we come into our walk today in Central Park, as we begin at a pretty familiar area. I wanted to stick near a location we refer to as Manhattan's backyard for this little picnicking, because I've had a few little picnics in the park, but I think the first one I ever had was at Sheep Meadow, a location we're going to make our way to on the walk today. So we're going to begin our walk just down at 59th Street and 5th Avenue. We're actually right about 60th Street and 5th Avenue as we start just along the edge of Doris C. Friedman Plaza, overlooking Grand Army. And I'll give everybody just another quick moment to vote in that poll, because I am going to end that and share the results right now. And it looks like we are seeing that a lot of people, majority, have had the opportunity to picnic in the park. Certainly a favorite pastime for some time here in Central Park. And then the more important part of that question is food required. I'm happy to see that almost a resounding about 90% of people said yes, because for me, food is required for a picnic. I think that's the main part. Otherwise, we're just kind of sitting outside, which is lovely, but it's a little bit nicer to sit outside and be able to eat as well. And one of the themes I'm going to talk a little bit about on our walk today is food. Pretty diverse topic right there, but we'll touch on a little bit of picnicking, a little bit of eating along our walk today. So I'm happy to see a lot of people say yes. In fact, nobody really knows where the term picnic came from. It's thought to have come from a French word, I think piquer, might be how it's pronounced, but it's thought to derive from the words really to pick, and meaning to pick at small amounts of food. Picnics were meant to be originally indoor, but later transitioning to outdoor activities where you would gather and have small meals, small little bites of food that you could pick at. So food, to me, is certainly required for a picnic. So as we make our way into the park, we'll enjoy some of the various food themes we might see. But before we talk about food, we can enjoy one of the park's gates that we're entering in. Some of you may be familiar that Central Park has a series of gates that are inscribed, helping to honor different types of people that might be visiting the park. These gates were originally named back in the 19th century, but didn't get inscribed until about the 20th century and early 21st century. We see here Scholars Gates. We actually see 4 main entrances along the south edge of the park, all along 59th Street. These names were given primarily to broad classes of workers, like Merchants Gate. Those would be like bankers, importers, traders, and more. We see Artisans Gate, which was really relating to more kind of positive, tangible work, as well as Artist Gate, which included musicians, artists, architects, and things like that. The 4th gate that we see is what we're standing in front of. It was meant to be commissioned for a kind of different or final class of laborers who didn't fall into any of the previous categories. This is a class that includes poets, the divine, statesmen, lawyers, authors, editors, teachers, and even physicians, really the people of science, as it was reported by the commissioners in 1862. But we do see Scholars Gate eventually helping to be a gate that welcomes professions of various sorts over here. And appropriately enough, near Scholars Gate, we do have the Strand Bookstore, an original institution that started down in Greenwich Village. They do still have a large location down there. You might notice their slogan, which is 18 miles of books. That's actually not really a hyperbole, but rather a literal statistic. They do have roughly over 2.5 million books in their collection, which spread out literally equals miles of literature. But you can stop by and see the Strand open many times down near your Scholars Gate. As we walk into the park a little bit, though, we can enjoy really many different areas to read or just picnic as we start to enter along 59th Street, passing by some of the lovely summer blooms coming in that are bringing in a lot of butterflies and pollinators. I wasn't quick enough to snap a picture of the monarch butterfly that was enjoying this butterfly weed here, but we'll keep our eyes open for some other little pollinators along the way. As we head a little further up, we can make our way into the Central Park Zoo, a familiar location for many people, one that is today cared for by the Wildlife Conservation Society. And as we walk up a little bit, we can find one of our first spots to maybe touch down and get a little bite to eat. Stopping off here in the zoo on the southern end, we can find the Dancing Crane Cafe. Dancing Crane Cafe, like most of the little concessionaires in the park, is privately operated by a group that is not affiliated with the Central Park Conservancy or directly with the Parks Department. We do see a lot of these private concessionaires being able to, again, help support the park's care while providing us maybe an area and place to get some food. Over here, you'll find some of the few actually benched off areas in the park where you can sit down and not really have to sit on a bench without a tabletop. But over here, we can enjoy some of the views we get in the zoo, including some of the whimsical statues brought in the 1930s during the zoo's second restoration. We do see some of these animals like the dancing goat over here, adding a little bit of enjoyment to our areas of consumption. As you travel through the park, you can find a few areas with picnic tables, such as up near the Great Lawn in Central Park, another great spot to go picnicking or have an outdoor meal. As we exit the zoo, though, we can stop briefly in the Arsenal building. Might not look like this is a public entrance, but this building is open to the public, and you are welcome to stop in during about the 9 to 5 o'clock hours, Monday through Fridays in this building. Coming into this building, you will find a public restroom, but you'll also find actually some other interesting little things. If you ever wanted to get a Parks Department water bottle or t-shirt, I think this is the place to go. But if you do stop in this building, you will find a secret hidden little concessionary area. They do have different types of breakfast foods and other snacks and treats to go or to stay. A lot of people don't know about this little hidden concessionary stand in the Arsenal building on the bottom floor, but a lot of different places and options to get some food. We do, I believe, have some gluten-free and vegan options for anybody that's interested. Those can be a little harder to come by in certain areas. But as we exit the Arsenal building, we can check out some other kind of areas to eat over here in the park. Although these areas we're coming up to might not really be used by people. If we kind of peek through the tree line, we might be able to see who is eating over here. Looking in the kind of middle of this photo, if we zoom in a little bit, we can see some sleepy California sea lions. I think these are probably some of the most misidentified animals here. Everybody always calls them seals, but they are California sea lions. Really incredible animals that we have here. As we walk a little bit further up, we can take a closer view of these sleepy lions, and we're not the only one to enjoy them. California sea lions, they're found along the western coast of North America, areas of Vancouver, south down to Mexico, and areas of the Galapagos Islands. California sea lions are also the only species that are exhibited in all 5 Wildlife Conservation Society parks in New York City. That's the Bronx Zoo, the Central Park Zoo, Prospect Park Zoo, Queens Zoo, and the New York Aquarium. Individuals from all of these different zoos are periodically moved around between parks to ensure for proper genetic breeding and to ensure the population is sustainable and genetically healthy. We also see these animals getting daily feedings 3 times a day at 11:30, 1:30, and 3:30 p.m. So if you do ever want to come and see these sea lions in a little bit more active of a state, you can stop by earlier in the day. As we're walking around through the park, we're coming during that kind of golden hour time, morning, like 5:30. So a lot of these sea lions, after eating a few times today, are feeling rather sleepy. We'll let some of these sleepy giants rest up, and we'll check back later to find maybe another day in the park to see feeding in action. But of course, eating can be found all around in Central Park. As we start to exit the zoo area, we'll make our way a little bit north, wrapping around some of my favorite sections of Central Park, coming through the Delacorte Clock arches, leading us to the Dean Slope area. Dean just being a Scottish word for valley. And as we start to come through these transverse arches, we can come out, maybe stop and get a hot dog along the way. Of course, a very classic New York City treat to eat. And there's plenty of concessionary stands located around the park. Again, like most of the private operating facilities here in the park, these people are paying concessionary stand fees and permit fees to work here and to provide us food. And of course, on the hot, humid summer days we've been having, they are a blessing to see some ice cream, cold water, and cold beverages waiting for us around various bends and pathways in the park. As we travel a little further up, grab a drink of water, because of course we have to stay hydrated out here today, and we'll make our way a little bit further up through the Dean Slope. Now, my favorite areas to come in the park and eat are probably along benches that give us really beautiful views of wildflowers, sometimes things we consider weeds, but as many of us know today, are extremely important for countless different butterfly, moth, caterpillar, bees, and many other species. Here we can see some milkweed starting to bloom. This is the main food source of monarch butterflies at all stages of their lives. And we can see, of course, plenty of different bees enjoying them as well. As we walk up the Dean Slope, we can find a few benches along the top that will provide us a great spot to stop and eat. As we do walk up, we can enjoy the views, but one thing we can also keep in mind is where we're picnicking and the types of restrictions that may apply to it. There's not really restrictions against eating in woodlands like the Dean Slope, the Hallett Nature Sanctuary, the Ramble, or the Northwoods. However, you do want to keep in mind they will not find any garbage cans in these areas. Something purposely done to reduce the rodent populations that thrive on a lot of our trash and refuse. Removing trash cans from natural areas like the Dean Slope, Hallett, Ramble, and Northwoods, we've seen a reduction in rodents. So you may have to hold on to your trash a little bit longer depending where you're going to eat. But that is a best practice, especially if we take the trash out of the park altogether to reduce the impact on the wildlife out here. So something to keep in mind, the more beautiful and serene settings you can find might require a little bit of extra work relocating that trash, but it is very much worth it. And if you would like a little bit easier of an in and out of the park, there's of course plenty of different lawns we can see as we start to exit the Dean Slope and check out some of these plentiful available lawns. But of course, one thing to keep in mind is that not all lawns in Central Park are the same. Some have certain restrictions and some have different operating hours even. Most of the lawns you're going to see opening up during the summertime are open from roughly 9 a.m. to dusk. However, please check signage if you're not sure, as some lawns are closed for the season to allow them to rest and heal, as well as be reseeded so we can have some more lush green grass coming just ahead. As we cross the road over here, we're going to check out another area of grass that never allows people on it, and that's for good reason. The grass we're checking out over here is none other than the wonderful patches that help to support the 8 rows of elm trees that line the Central Park Mall. Now, these are never open to the public, and it's for good reason. Elm trees, while they are very large and grand, they're also very susceptible to damage. A lot of people don't realize how big of a factor soil compaction is on the health of plants in Central Park. Stomping soil and ground, even though it might look lush and untrafficked, can create a lot of compaction in the soil. And that compaction on the root systems of elm trees can actually be enough to kill and fell an entire tree. So by keeping these fences around and keeping people off, we're reducing millions and millions of footprints on these areas that would otherwise compress the soil. And with Central Park receiving over 42 million visits a year, more than the 7 most visited national parks combined. That's why we have some of these rules in place, so we can preserve this beauty for at least another 160 years. As we make our way around the eastern side of these mall trees, we can also find plenty of other reasons to admire, respect, and care for these elm trees. Not only do they just look so grand, it's incredible seeing nature finding a way. And specifically, the one tree we can see pictured here on the left is one of my favorite elm trees along the mall. This one is literally growing directly out of a small fissure of this Manhattan schist, the bedrock of New York. Splitting off into about 3 large trunks, this one is holding on in such an incredible and unique way. The growth of these trees, again, developing and kind of evolving with this transformed landscape, really are something of awe to behold. But looking at this tree, we can find that we're not the only ones admiring it. Looking up at the nice curvature and spread of this tree, which is again splitting into 3 trunks, basically creating like 3 separate elm trees. We notice that again, we're not the only ones admiring this tree, or at least utilizing it. Looking up, you might be able to see something sitting in the top of the tree over there. Actually, not even in the top, but pretty low to us. You zoom in a little bit, we can see sitting right in the middle is a nice red-tailed hawk looking over, getting ready to maybe scoop up a nice little meal, or maybe even digesting after a meal. But looking around in the treetops, we can see again, everybody's got food on their minds, especially on a hot day like today, when we just want to sit and relax and take in all the beautiful surroundings. As we walk under these trees, we'll keep our eyes open for more red-tailed hawks or other animals, and we'll also enjoy the wonderful shade they're providing, making our enjoyment in the park that much more enjoyable. As we move a little bit to the side or to the north of this tree, we can look over this little Memorial Grove area. This Memorial Grove, you may remember from a few weeks ago when we took a little music in Central Park. We walked and we stopped by. I was mentioning how for summer stage, this is a great area to set up a blanket and picnic and enjoy the show. You can actually see a little bit of the fences of summer stage and the building in the back. The stage is actually facing us, so we get a lot of that sound carrying directly towards this area. This is certainly a favorite spot to picnic if you're coming into the park on the day of a summer stage performance and you want more of an evening time picnic. What we can notice again is the summer stage peering through. And what's interesting to consider is the evolution of Rumsey Playfield, the location where summer stage sits today. Its name may imply at one point it was a playground, but before that, served a couple different uses. What we would have found here at one point in time is a building called the Casino. The casino was not a gambling casino, but rather a kind of nicknamed or officially named officially given to this building. Casino means a little house in Italian. So this little house was actually more of an early restaurant here in the park. It did start a little differently though. This building originally at one point began actually as a building and structure designed by park creator Calvert Vaux. It was designed around 1864 and originally it was a ladies' refreshment house. This ladies' refreshment house or ladies' refreshment salon was basically a dining place for women that were visiting the park without male escort or male company. This was a simple cottage until it was renovated and took on a little bit more of the grander scale and size that we see depicted here. We do see the cottage transforming and losing a little bit of its original charm, eventually starting to cater more towards like a wealthier clientele, serving things like fish, chicken, lamb, various types of steaks, mushrooms, lobsters, scallops, oysters, and of course, Clams Casino, very fitting, as well as offering a lot of booze, different types of champagnes, cordials, licorice liquor, even some absinthe that you would find here. It was a favorite spot eventually over time of some interesting New York City characters, including a New York City mayor by the name of Jimmy Walker. We do see this area, especially throughout the 20th century and throughout the late 19th century during the Tammany Hall administration, a lot of corruption existing in New York, this area taking on a rather interesting twist. At one point in time, the city lawyers actually evicted the casino's proprietor. And we do see Mayor Jimmy Walker during that time appointing a kind of friend and hotel businessman, Sidney Solomon, He basically appointed Sidney Solomon because Sidney Solomon introduced Jimmy Walker to his tailor. So we do see an interesting shift for the casino, becoming a big nightclub during the 20th century and even operating a bit as a speakeasy during Prohibition. This continued interesting history would eventually catch up with the casino and even Jimmy Walker. We do see in 1929 Jimmy Walker winning re-election as mayor against Fiorello LaGuardia. We do see a few years later that kind of corruption from his past catching up to him. He would eventually resign and actually flee the country. And around 1932, we see Fiorello LaGuardia being elected mayor. During that time, we do see him appointing Robert Moses, a new parks commissioner, with both of their mission being to really destroy this symbol of corruption as they saw it here in Central Park. Within that year, we do see this building being razed with basically everything being demolished except for the stained glass windows, which would be repurposed and used for the 86th Street Transverse Police Precinct, which is still in use today. So you will not find a casino or a little house in Central Park anymore, but an interesting evolution of eateries in the park. As we leave this area, of course, we don't have a restaurant at Rumsey Playfield anymore, but just a little north of here, you can go visit the Loeb Boathouse and get a bite to eat right near the lake, very close by to the original location of the Ladies Refreshment House and later the casino. As we make our way away from this nightclub that used to be, we'll cross over towards the west side of the park and enter over to some other favorite areas to picnic or enjoy the sweeping meadows and lawns. And as we come by, we can see there are a few individuals that are allowed to picnic and sit on the grass of the elm trees. Of course, the wildlife, especially the winged wildlife. You see a lot of pigeons and other animals really cooling off under the canopy shade on this really hot and humid past few days that we've been having here. You'll especially see on hot summer days, animals doing things that people refer to as sploots. Splooting, S-P-L-O-O-T-I-N-G. Splooting is commonly seen with dogs when they lay out kind of on all fours and create a lot of surface area, often done on a cooler surface. It'll help animals lower their body temperature and regulate a little bit more. You can see often squirrels splooting out on maybe a shady area of asphalt that's a little bit cooler. And of course, plenty of birds tuckering down, using less energy and trying to get a little bit of shade wherever they can. These hot days, again, everybody's looking to relax, not really engage in too much physical activity. As we make our way a little bit beyond these resting birds, we can see some other birds that are in a little bit more feisty of a attitude. The birds we're seeing over here, a couple eagles, part of none other than the Eagles and Prey statue. Eagles and Prey is a little bit more violent of a meal being had here in Central Park, as it depicts a very natural scene of two eagles attacking and eating a goat. Now, this is a piece that I enjoy since I'm a big fan of nature. It's a very naturally depicted scene rather than some of the other animals that are a little bit more comical or whimsical. This one you can imagine is hit or miss depending if you like this type of imagery or not. This piece is very interesting though. It is the first work of sculpture, not a monument, but a sculpture like a bronze piece like this that was installed in Central Park. It was cast in Paris in 1850, and it is the oldest known work of art on any city parkland. This is a really cool piece. It was actually a gift of American millionaire Gordon W. Burnham, who gifted this piece to the park in 1863. It was created in 1850, though, by a French artist, Christophe Frontin, who depicted a lot of natural scenes like this. Now, this was, again, kind of hit or miss for people visiting the park, especially during the 19th century. Its violent depiction was maybe off-putting to some. Another reason it might have been off-putting was because before picnicking became popular, that wasn't something we see coming really until the 20th century. You might indulge in other different forms of recreation and enjoyment in the park, like taking a goat carriage ride. Of course, for younger kids, this was probably a little bit more of a fun activity equivalent to riding in a horse-drawn carriage. Taking these goat rides up and down the mall, you were really making use of New York City, which at that point in time had the nickname Gotham. You may have heard of this term being used for like Batman and different superhero movies. Gotham is actually a Latin word that was originally used to kind of nickname New York. It translates to goat village. And there were a lot of goats present, doing agricultural type use, but also recreational types of fun that they provide, like these carriage rides. You can imagine riding in one of these carriages past eagles and prey. You can also notice in the background of this, we can see Beethoven's statue, which is right near eagles and prey. So a kid riding by and seeing a goat being picked apart by two eagles might have been a little bit of a violent view that might have, again, been off-putting for some, but it would certainly stand the test of time, as Eagles and Prey has remained in its location since its erection back in 1863. We don't see any goats really in the park anymore, besides that one that's on Eagles and Prey. But as we do make our way further out, we can see how some of the lawns that once may have had goat or sheep roaming around them now have plenty of people enjoying these wonderful picnic lawns. What we're seeing here is Frisbee Hill, a little hill that gets that name from its, of course, ample use for Frisbee playing, and a little bit more of a recreational space compared to the nearby Sheep Meadow, which is a little bit more lax and used for picnicking. But of course, any lawn that's open and available is certainly a great picnic lawn. And beyond picnicking out here, this is also where we encourage people to come and picnic for our movie festivals. These little film festivals done by the Central Park Conservancy usually offer a nice little range of programs, usually like a documentary in there, as well as maybe a classic movie or two. And of course, what better way to watch a movie than outside with the sounds, smells, and feelings of the park surrounding you. You can keep an eye out for a potential film schedule that may be coming out on our website, as well as other different events that we'll be hosting, ones that aren't necessarily picnic related, like the Harlem Performance Festival. So if you do want to see some free performances in the park, certainly check our website. As we make our way around Frisbee Hill, though, we can enjoy some of the various locations where people are choosing to set up, whether it be on the grass, under a tree, or even on a rock, providing a little bit of an extended view over the meadow. As we make our way just out of Frisbee Hill, we can find Mineral Springs, today a Late Pan-Coten, but initially this building would be a little different. The original structure, much like the original Ladies Refreshment House, was designed by Central Park co-creator Calvert Fox, and it was a richly decorated pavilion in more of a Moorish style. What it really functioned as was a mineral water bar. During this time, we do see physicians believing that waters had numerous health benefits, especially after the creation of the 1842 Croton Aqueduct, reduced yellow fever and cholera-related deaths. Coming here, you wouldn't find any food, but you would find various mineral waters from around the world. Today, we can find some snacks here at the Late Pan-Coten, and as we exit this area, we can find a great spot to eat them or picnic with them on Manhattan's backyard, Sheep Meadow. As we step out here on Sheep Meadow, we can enjoy this vast, about 14-acre landscape, which feels much larger than it actually is. As we walk out here, we can see no shortage of people enjoying this picnicking activity, or even just sunbathing. You can see how the shade is certainly being favored on this hot day today. But stepping out onto the grass itself feels cooling, as well as very comforting, as we have a nice squish, a nice almost outdoor carpet here. Do always have to give a big shout out to our incredible turf care team that does a phenomenal job in maintaining these meadows. Grass does all look the same, but there's about 5 species of grass in here, ranging from few types of fennel seeds, Kentucky bluegrass, as well as some ryegrass in here. And again, creates a wonderful, nice kind of squishy and pillowy type of area to lay out on. Whether you have a blanket or whether you just pop down and enjoy it based on the grass comfort alone, this is an incredible spot to enjoy. And this was always a favorite for many people to picnic on, as well as my first ever picnic location in Central Park. Coming out here, we can remember just how far this location has come. Visiting prior to 1980, we would see a very worn down set of lawns here in Central Park. The transformation has been immaculate over the years, and maintaining lawns are very difficult as we do have to aerate them, reseed them, and also, of course, properly water and keep people off so it can reheal. Thanks to the Central Park Task Force, which would eventually become the Central Park Conservancy, we see these lawns being completely revitalized and repurposed back to their lush beauty as they were originally created for. Picnicking would eventually start to become more popular by the mid 20th century as new parks commissioners open up permits for events and really break the traditions of 19th century Central Park. Today, we're extremely happy to have the incredible beauty and open spaces available, and we encourage you to stop by and experience locations like Sheep Meadow for yourself. As we come to the end of our tour today, I want to thank you for visiting Central Park and keeping these landscapes clean and green. As we do come to the end of our walk, we've explored, of course, just a small section of Central Park, but there are a tremendous amount of areas to visit and to be able to picnic in the park. You can find a few links that I'll have my colleague Jose drop, one of them including things you can consider and know about the lawns, involving not only their care, but also where you can go depending your use for picnicking in the park. Last thing I do want to mention is that we do have plenty of different opportunities and events to engage with the park and various themes. We do have a lot of specialty tours that are launching, including a new tour I put together that will be coming out in the coming week or two, titled Music in Central Park. So if you ever want to dive into one of my favorite topics in more detail, come join us on one of these in-person tours listed here. My colleague Jose will drop the link in the bio or link in the chat for anybody that's interested in checking out more about these tours. I'll also leave the chat open for a little bit longer to answer any questions you might have. But I do want to thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope to see you real soon on a tour, whether it be in person or virtual. From all of us here at the Central Park Conservancy, stay safe, be well, and we'll see you soon. Take care.